let's talk about music stuff. I would
Yeah.
love to help you out because you won. So you get a session for your win. You get
I appreciate that. Yeah, all kinds of I mean like I think what I wanted to sort of get out of it was sort of get a better understanding of like how you approach music and work and maybe share like some epiphanies I had in the last few weeks about music and
are you talking
work
about
because I think
music and non-music work, or are you talking about thinking of
well,
music as work?
both actually, because I think you are in a sort of a unique situation where the stuff you do, even the education side, like the dojo stuff, is still music related. You know,
Yeah.
it's not like this like totally separate thing. And
There's
that's like
definitely
really,
there's lots of it that is not very musicy, like learning how to do Facebook ads and shit. Like
hmm
that's not very musicy. And like when it comes to running a music business, if you want it to be a job, you have to treat it like a job. So there's times when like I spend a whole week doing paperwork every year. There's times when I'm like, like planning a tour or figuring out what the marketing and branding for something's gonna be, or doing like fiddly annoying like finishing on a track that is like not really creative at all. Like you're just like,
hmm
let's test it in this environment. Let's go fix all those things. Let's test it in that environment. Let's go fix all those things. So like there's definitely like portions of the audio engineering part that are like not very creative, and like drafting a promo campaign, writing all those letters, organizing all your contacts into spreadsheets, figuring out
hmm
how you're going to mass SMS only people who live in Detroit. It's setting up several timers of promo things to go off and blah blah blah. Like there's definitely lots of the being a DJ and professional musician part that is not at all music. And
hmm
there's about as much of the dojo stuff that is like music as there is of music that is like not music. So
Right, right.
yeah,
That
it's
totally
about this.
makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, because
So
I guess like to fill you in real quick. I'm not sure if I told you this before, probably not, because it's always weird in like the group Zoom
yeah.
settings that like I don't want to feel like I take up too much of your time so other
Yeah,
people
it's all
can
good.
get a word in. But like what I do these days is I started a podcast in 2021 just for fun because it was the
Oh yeah, what's it
pandemic.
called?
It's called The Daily Churn. It's about personal finance and like travel points and award
Oh,
hacking,
dude,
stuff like
I
that.
totally
Um,
that's all shit that I need to know about.
so I've been doing that for the last few
Is it
years,
daily?
and no, dude, it's like once every 2 weeks,
Oh,
which
okay,
is
cool.
like,
So I was
and
gonna
it kind of
say if
like,
it's daily, like fuck.
dude, I mean, that was like that's why I called it the Daily Trend. And once I started doing it, I was like, I can't even do this once a week. So 2 weeks is sort of the frequency. And it's just been kind of growing and to the point where now that's like the majority of my income. And the part where this might get interesting for you is that the income comes entirely from the paid Discord community that I run. We have a Discord server where there's about 500 plus people and they pay to be in the Discord. And that's something I
Huh.
wanted to like maybe touch on that at the end with you because I feel like it's like I see so much potential in the Discord you have right now. And
We
like,
actually have been backlogging podcast episodes and getting ready to launch a podcast too.
oh, nice, nice. So yeah, the whole podcast. So that's like my content creation side, but like I know you've been doing these like remix your life episodes every week with the slideshows and all that stuff. And I know how much goes into making one podcast episode. And I see the stuff you do, and I'm like, are you just like really fast, or are you spending a ton of time
Yeah,
preparing
it's
and
a
making
fucking ton
these?
of time, dog. Yeah,
Yeah.
those I mean, the first one took a lot longer than like the later ones, but it was like three 12+ hour days every week to put those together, at
Yeah.
least, that were like fully dedicated to those classes. You know, and I mean, it helps to have a lot of the material. Like I've taught classes on those subjects before, so like I knew what I was gonna say, but it's just like making all the slides, editing things, doing all the artwork,
Mhm.
etc. That was like pretty time consuming. And like that and doing the challenge, I was like, fuck. what have I done to my life? Like I just didn't like by the end I had like almost 500 unanswered text messages that was just like I was just like my life is broken from this. Like I fucked up. You know? Um
Wow, that's like how do you juggle that with you actually like DJing and performing? Plus, I know you have a
well,
kid as
I didn't
well.
do
Like,
like I did like one show during that period. I knew that if I
okay, you
was
kind of
doing
just took a break
shows,
from.
yeah, I knew
Okay,
that if I
yeah.
was doing shows, I'd fuck it up. And then and then it's just like I pretty much just do music related stuff or like work or like hang out with my family. And those are like pretty much the two things that I do. And then like most of my friends I know through music and they're like
Mhm.
intimately involved in music. And when I'm like, ah, I miss that person. We should start a collab so we can hang out, you know?
Two birds, one stone.
Yeah, so I'm pretty much always just like, we'll like start a project and then like get to like, yeah, I mean, even Bill, it's like, like we're pretty tight, but like there'll be times when I don't talk to him for a couple months and then we like work together every day for a while until our thing is done. And
Mhm.
I might not see him a bit because it's like, most musicians are like that, where they're like, it just takes so much time because even as soon as you're done something, you're like, I want to do this other thing. And then like, your ambition is like endless, right? And it's like there's always other genres to explore. There's always other ways of making music to explore, different people to collab with, like different ways music and other arts can interact. And like until you like are not excited about doing new stuff all the time. Like, I don't know. I guess I just get like
Mhm.
I can just get excited about doing new stuff. So I always like I'm like, yeah, I'll do that. I'll find the time. Sure. And then I'm like,
Well,
what have I done?
because then like one thing I've been like that's so fascinating to me because like the thing I've been really that's like trying to change my mindset a little bit about the whole like how you approach music time is the book. I think in one of the Remix Your Life episodes, the Creative Act by Rick Rubin. You mentioned you were
So
reading it.
good.
So I'm like halfway through it and it's like blowing my mind every chapter. It's so
Yeah,
good.
I was so stunned too when I read it. I was like, I think he might have taken one of my courses.
Right, because he
Like he
calls
might.
things a
There's so
little
much stuff
differently,
that's
but it's
so
your
fucking
stuff.
similar to the
Yeah.
way I've been explaining things for 20 years. I'm like, did he
Yeah.
get the old methodology or something? It's pretty awesome. I mean, granted, like he brought like his own fucking take, which is like way more legit than mine, to the material. But it is remarkable how much of the material is similar, and it's not like I didn't even finish the book until the end of the course. Like I started it halfway through it. I was like, oh my God, he used like a lot of the same things in the earlier portions of the course. And then a lot of those things are things that I've been teaching. Like I've been teaching like, because I studied philosophy, but specifically Asian philosophy at like university. So it's like I kind of colored how I like see the world and like which metaphors I use and stuff, and like like the things I knew about were like, I put enough time into martial arts when I was younger to be able to like use martial arts metaphors. I put enough time into cooking to be able to use cooking metaphors. And then, psychology and philosophy are like what I took at school. So, and art, and like those are really, because like talking about music is hard because it's like you can't see it or touch it really, and it's like, and like so much of this stuff is like it's hard for it to click because it's like, how do you describe a color you've never seen to a blind person, you know? And it's like when you're talking about music and you're teaching music, the person you're teaching can't hear it like you can yet. So if you lead them to it with like a metaphor and then they apply that metaphor to what they're hearing, then they can learn to hear that thing. So like I mean there's this guy at the end of the track feedback last time and he had this like track where he was going for this kind of wonky aesthetic, but everything was like a bit dry, so it was like really awkward and I was like, how do I explain this guy that like it needs to be like fucking a little like dirtier to sound like
Mhm.
it's intentional, you know? And I was like, okay, you ever watch like a movie in HD where the post-production was not done for HD? And like you can see like a little too much detail on everybody's pores, and like the colors are fucking not quite unified. It
Hmm.
looks like so real that it's like uncomfortable. And I was like, that's basically what's happening. Like, if you take this song and you run it through a cassette deck and you put some reverb on it, it'll be like putting an Instagram filter on or doing like post-production on a film. And then all of the wonkiness will seem intentional. You know, and
Totally.
it's like to try to explain that point to someone without using that metaphor would be really difficult, you know?
Hmm.
So, so yeah, but it's, and I mean, I guess maybe some of the Eastern philosophy metaphors might have been more obvious than I thought. That could also be it. But it was pretty uncanny how much of it was how much.
Yeah, I think he calls them like seeds and you call them sparks. He
Yeah,
mentions
yeah.
like
There's a
yeah,
couple
this is like
differences, but I'm like, come on.
it's like yeah, it's pretty awesome. But like I think what I got out of it though was just like the way he thinks about music is a much more like spiritual, playful experimentation kind of a
Mhm.
thing where I've been approaching music like how I approach work, which is sort
Yeah.
of this very like regimented,
Well, you have
focused,
to do it
like
at
not
first like that.
playful.
You have to
Yeah.
do it at first like that because like if you start by just losing yourself in the magic of sound in your daytime sessions, it's really hard to complete anything, you know?
Mm,
Whereas if you like do mix downs on other people's songs until you're good enough at mixing, and like you take a bunch of stems and finish them for like some song you don't care about, you do that a bunch of times, you'll have the kind of like objective skills to be able to be like, okay, how do I get lost, fucking forget what key I'm in, lose track of time, like go down
hmm.
the rabbit hole, and then turn that into something that's like makes sense to a person that didn't go down that rabbit hole with me, you know? And it's like
Right.
so you have to approach it in like a really well, you don't have to, but if you want to get results like and get to the point where you can like actually complete music and not just get lost, then
Mm.
you do have to approach it in this like really kind of regimented and prescriptive way at first until you know it's like you like know the rules before you break the rules kind of thing.
Got
And
it, got
so
it.
like
Because I guess like for you, when you make music these days, is it like, are you like just like able to kind of shift between the mindset of like I'm gonna play an experiment versus the mindset of like I need to finish these tracks or I'm gonna mix this album, and you
yeah,
can
it
kind
kind
of
of
just
depends.
like
It honestly kind of depends on the deadline and like how
mm,
much I care about the project. Like I did this remix for Craddy that I was really hyped about. And I loved the original track like when it came out like 14 years ago. It was one of the like big tracks of the early glitch hop era, right? And I was like, okay, this is a great opportunity. It's got like John Casey and Champagne Drip and fucking all kinds of people on this remix EP. Like I want to do a good job of it. And like that remix, like I'm fucking made like 5 or 6 remixes before I was like, that's the one, you know? And I wouldn't have done that for a normal track. Like I had to kind of keep at it until I had this like because like that whole sound of like you know that whole like glitch sound. It's like
mhm,
it's not just a matter of like putting glitch plugins on stems, right? Like a lot of that is like using resampling and switching techniques and stuff on like a pool of original audio that you've generated that, you know, is all like of a piece, right? And like sometimes when you make like a version you get stuck on and then 2 other versions and then you're exhausted and you make that third version and you're like being really minimal about it, but then you have like all these fucking pieces and they're all in the right key, they're all produced, they're all like really nice sounding, and then you use just enough of those to make this like, you know, minimal piece song, but it has all these sound design moments that took like fucking hours that are all custom for the track, right? That's kind of part of that aesthetic. So, you know, none of that time, like even though I made 5 versions that didn't come out by the time I got to the one that I liked, I wouldn't have been able to make that one that I liked if I didn't have those five other ones that didn't come out. And then like, I'll have a show and I'll play some of the ones that didn't come out, and people are like, "Oh, what the fuck? Like, this is, what's this fucking dub plate?" And then I'm like, "Great,
Mm.
into the folder of live show fodder, so that I always have like unreleased shit when I play, because like I try to play like 80% or more of unreleased originals if I can. I'll play like a couple that people recognize, so that they're like, oh, he must be playing original music. But like,
Hmm.
because like if you play entirely unreleased original music, people are like, was that a DJ set? I don't know, you know? So yeah, so I like, I try to balance it out a bit, or like put some acapellas from my old songs over some new beats or whatever, make some Frankensteins and do it, do it that way is a great way to make live show stuff. But yeah, it's like there's not really like when it comes to um doing quote unquote real music, there's not really a right way. Like some tracks you get lucky and they come out fucking easy like a timer beat and it just works and often doesn't need more than that. And then other tracks you might have to make six versions and spend like fucking 100 hours on it, you
So
know?
when you're making like six versions, what's your like mindset at that point? Because when I'm in that frustration mode where it's like it's not working, I start getting desperate. I start feeling desperate, and it just like is not a fun mind state where I'm like trying to
Yeah, yeah,
scramble to find things to
it's a little
like,
frustrating sometimes. It can get frustrating,
yeah.
but you know,
Do you just
I
like
think,
power through it? Is that like your,
yeah, yeah, that's why I was like, it depends on how much you care about the project.
yeah.
Because if you get stuck on a project you don't really care about, fuck it, whatever.
Right.
You don't care about it.
Move
Just
on.
just do something else until you get a fucking swish, you know. But like, if it's a project that you really care about, like that one in particular too is like on Alpha Pop, and like that's a label that I've always really liked and wanted to be on. And it's got like a lot of my favorite artists on it. And that track was like a big, when I was like maybe 2 years into ill.Gates, that track came out. And it was like, that was really like, you know, that was like a big I think that track came out like maybe 2005, something like that. Maybe even maybe 2000 and oh no, probably would have been 2008. Because like, yeah, because glitch hop first kind of like it was kind of like incubating, like what we think of as like West Coast glitch hop, and that like sweet spot was like incubating like 2003 to 2006. But it was like, unless you knew the artist, you couldn't get those tracks. Like there was not,
Yeah.
you couldn't just, there's no glitch hop at a record store or anything. And
I
like,
think my exposure was that Ants track by Edit. The like
yeah,
they did the two guys danced to it, and that was how I was like, holy shit, this stuff is amazing.
yeah, that was kind of like proto, like that kind of stuff. Because like Prefuse 73 was doing stuff like that too.
Mm.
That was kind of like not dance floor really, but it was really like, Dave Said and Sayer and Jansen, Lauren to an extent. Um, Fucking Tipper, of course, like that Tip Hop album, I think was probably the first real like West Coast like bass glitch hop album that like, you like that was like that like Burning Man, like California festivals,
Mm.
that's now the Denver sound. That was kind of like the first big record that was like that. And that would have been like 2003, maybe.
Mm.
That was like the kind of proto early days glitch hop. But it didn't really start like people didn't call it glitch hop or anything until like 2006 basically. And then 2 years after that, once that record started coming out, and like people like labels started being more into it, and putting them out, because South Africa had kind of a parallel glitch hop scene coming too, but it was a lot more like on the hip hop side, and like
Mm.
not so much like party bass electronic music. But yeah, so that tune when it came out, that was like kind of like 2008 was like the year that people like knew about it, like outside of fucking Burning Man and certain festivals in like Oregon and California and stuff. Because like it wasn't even really in Denver yet at that point, you know.
Which
Um,
track was this of his?
Android porn.
Oh, Entry Point. Yeah, that's like, I mean, that's the one track of his that I like listened to a whole ton when that came out, and I was like, love to hear more of that stuff. And then I think he sort of just dropped off the radar,
Yeah, he
releasing
still
publicly.
fucking kills it, man. He's got like all
Yeah.
kinds of stuff. He could just put out a record with Ahi last year that was pretty big,
Oh,
and
nice.
yeah, he's still killing it. He's got a new EP he sent me that's like awesome. Yeah, he's still, but he does mostly like film scoring and stuff now. Like a lot
Right. I watched
of
that
like
Craddy episode you did with him. That was awesome.
yeah, it was fun to pick his brain about all this fucking all this
So I was
cool.
like, the whole time, because before that, I was like, what happened to Craddy? And then that episode came out. I was like, oh, okay, he's doing film stuff now. Okay,
Yeah.
cool. Got it. um, But like one thing I did want to kind of like reflect back on though was just like with the book, he's like very much like, hey, who you are is your music and your music is you. There's not really this necessarily
Yeah.
siloing effect. And I feel like in my life, I silo myself pretty heavily, like not intentionally, but I'm noticing more thanks to reading that book. And well, a few weekends ago, my wife and I, it was our 10-year anniversary, and we like
Hey,
took
congrats.
acid. Thank you. It's our tradition to like rent a VRBO on the beach and take acid. And I'd been reading the book and I'd been doing a lot of therapy recently. And I was like, oh, right. I'm a kind of emotionally shut down person. Like I don't feel a lot of emotions because of the way I was raised. And I'm feeling now that it's like reflecting in my music that I'm having trouble expressing myself, and I'm trying to just kind of align everything a little better, approach work,
Do you
approach
have
life.
do you have like a place in your like journal or a collection of file folders or like even just like a place in your mind that you've kind of got to from therapy where you're like you like externalize things that are like I don't know if like I guess like totems, or things that are
Hmm.
kind of like powerful like personal symbols or like to write like dream journaling or things that you like never show. Like do you have a place that's not in your head that is like private, that has shit that is so private that you would be terrified if anybody saw it?
Yeah, the journal for sure, which I got from you, just the pages every day, and kind of just like writing down word vomit in the mornings, when I can. And that's really been super helpful. And it's helped me realize, exactly that just like there's so much, like, there's so many different ways you can view music. And with work, I'm such a workaholic. I can sit on this desk right here for 16 hours, not drink water, not pee, not eat food, and just
You take
work. I'm
Adderall or something? Shit.
no, dude, that's just how I was raised, like I'm Chinese, and like Chinese families generally don't show a lot of emotion. The emotions they show was praise if you do a good job and criticism if you don't. So for me, like
Criticism if you
love
do a normal job.
if you do it, yeah, exactly. If you get an A minus. No, this is for real though. Like, and so
Yeah.
I've like grown up to associate praise with love. And so what that translates into when I do work is that if I do a good job, if I make this thing perfect, and this has worked out well, like career-wise, because capitalism loves that shit, which is just
Yeah, yeah.
like you're a work bot that makes perfect products. But that's how I've been approaching work, as just kind of like overworked, workaholic, super focused. I can do 100 tracks in 100 days, no problem, because habit forming and commitments aren't like my weakness. And so I've been like approaching music in that same way, and I'm realizing that's like not how I want to like approach music or live my life. And so what I wanted to kind of like pick your brain about is because I know your workload is so high that you must be doing so much work all the time to manage the dojo, produce these like produces path, remix your life, and do all the stuff. And I'm like, what is your like headspace when you're doing it? Because for me, it's like I'm gonna shut off all emotions and
Yeah.
just do this thing.
Well,
But
I see it's more like I'm shutting off the world so
mm,
that I can explore my emotions, and it's different. It's a different thing than work. Like I don't think of music like I think of the creative act as a reward in itself.
Mm.
and like when I do music, even though it is my job, I consider the part that is my job the everything except for being in the studio part, where it's like, you know, building the mailing list, setting up promo campaigns, networking with fucking people in the industry, figuring out like sometimes I'm strategic about collabs, most of the time not, but sometimes I am. My manager's like, yo, you need to have at least like four strategic collabs a year and like stop
Yeah.
stop working with so many non-musicians, you know.
Yep.
But that stuff like laying the groundwork, like the stuff that sells the tickets is not what you do in the studio. It's like
Yep.
the hype and the fucking legwork and all that. So I consider that part the job, the flying around, the getting fucking people to buy tickets, doing promo, to an extent graphic design, and like, being figuring out how you're going to brand a tour, figuring out how you're going to make promoters excited, like doing all that background shit. I'm like, that's the stuff that I do so that I get more of this reward time, which is studio.
Mm.
And then when I'm making tracks, like, like I have like hundreds of unreleased tracks, like hundreds, and there's a lot of them that will never be released. And that's okay. That's not like not everything needs to come out. And a lot of the time it's like the tracks need to come out of me so that I can move on, but
Hmm.
they don't necessarily need to come out to the public. And then like sometimes I'll like, sometimes like I'll have some fucking, I have like a whole bunch of like really weird, like experimental down tempo tracks and shit that I'd never play at gigs. But then there'll be like one fucking morning at like somewhere outside, and I've been up all night the night before, and like so is everyone else. And like I'm like, okay, now's the time I'm gonna play the weird shit that I would never play at a commercial event. And
Yeah.
like the satisfaction that you get from just having this crate of fucking material that is like not normally what you do, and having people be like, what the fuck? Like this exists, It's like that is so like that's to me like the big payoff. Like that is like I wouldn't consider a set like that work. I wouldn't consider making that music work, you know? Um, so yeah, it's really kind of like um, like the actual it's like some people play video games for fun, some people do puzzles, some people fucking, draw fucking furry characters with erections, like people have different things that they like that it's like their fucking escape, you know?
Hmm.
And to me, the time in the music in like, yeah, it's like it's problem solving. I'm using similar parts of my brain that I might use if I were doing other kinds of problem solving, especially like communicating anything, because music is essentially a form of communication. So like it's a lot like, doing art or like writing a book or, anything else that's like creative. But it's like I kind of like I kind of just like I need it to be okay.
Hmm.
Like the world is pretty fucked. And like, what can we know about anything? Like the an accurate view of the world is to live with this like astounding level of uncertainty and like when you don't know anything at all, everything is crazy, and then you get like a toehold of certainty when you like learn all the names for things, and then you're like, oh, I know what these things are called. Everything is static and normal and I could cope. And then when you start asking like, what is X word really, and like really
Hmm.
start looking into anything, it's like you don't fucking know what anything is. Like we don't know what gravity really is. We don't know what electricity really is. We don't know what consciousness really is. We don't know what like, and even just like learning that like two-dimensional and three-dimensional music are like inherently different, you know, is like there's just so there's so much uncertainty in the world. And like even to know like I recently read the Three Body Problem books and like
Yes, I've read all three.
I read
Get to
them
the third book.
I
The
read
third,
oh I'm done. I fucking read them
dude,
all
the
back
third
to
book
back.
with the dimensions flattening
Oh,
into a plane. Oh, yeah,
insane. So
so
good,
good, so
right?
good.
And
Yes.
in that book series, you know, the point of that book series in many ways is that these novel moral quandaries you confront the protagonist and you as a reader are like the book forces you kind of like at this existential level to be like, okay, what is the right move, you know, and you kind of form your own opinions about that. And
Hmm.
then as the plot progresses, you'll often learn that what you would have done was the wrong fucking thing. And like you know, the Thomas Wade character, for example,
Hmm.
is so fucking amazing for that reason because he's like a monster. Like he's a fucking monster and you know he's a monster and everyone in the book knows he's a monster. But he has like a role to play in that story that is totally like big picture very beneficial. And you know, in some ways, like especially when they're getting sucked into the plane and they're like, if only we'd let fucking Wade be a fucking terrorist and do faster than light travel, then humanity wouldn't be just us escaping the
Yeah,
fucking plane, you
yeah.
know. And
I'm
like
excited to see how Netflix represents that on the. Have
yeah,
you
the
watched
moral
the?
ambiguity is
Yeah,
kind of lost in the Netflix series. Like
it
it's
is.
there's like
It
good
is.
guys and bad guys, you know. It's like it's a bit. I mean, that's adapting any book. Um,
Yeah.
but or like the you know the Taoist story of the farmer who lost his horse, right? I think I
Yep.
told you that in the
Yep.
thing, you know, and it's like you can't really know what's good or bad until you pick an arbitrary endpoint, and then you're like, okay, this judging from here with the values that we have at this arbitrary endpoint in retrospect what ended up being good or bad as relates to this goal at this point, you know, and that's the
Hmm.
only way that you can actually judge anything. And then that standard becomes dated and inappropriate as soon as like fucking time passes. And like,
Yep.
if you're going to accurately view the world, you have to accept that it's inherently unknowable. And there's so much stuff that's just like this, like viscerally affecting darkness in the world that you can just fucking spiral, you know, when you think about it too much and when you try and you know, and like even just like trying to fix the world all the time, you know, it's like I can't help but want to fix things. And like it's like so often um you know, it's so often like comes at like a great personal cost when you take on stuff like that. And it's like, you know, like or let's say like protesters, you know, like all the protesters at the universities
Hmm.
and stuff right now. And like there, we're gonna see some Kent State shit for sure, you know, like right now, the way it's going down. And like you have these people who are like Jewish organizations, like Holocaust survivors and stuff that are like, hey, maybe you shouldn't murder all those people who don't have a way to get out and like give them food and water. Like, you know,
Hmm.
if you could control the enemy's food, water, and electricity, you're just killing prisoners. Like, that's not a war. They don't have uniforms, they don't have fucking tanks, you know? Like, and like that's uh coming from in many ways from the Jewish people community, and then you have like the state being like, no, those it's anti-Semites, and in the name of anti-racism, we've got to send all these police in to go fucking beat the shit out of these Jew haters, you know? And it's like, how do you make sense of something like that? You know, how do you like, and like our world is full of things like that that are just so contradictory, and all these people trying to do the right thing and their view of the right thing, and they're like at odds, and every villain is the hero of their own story, you know? And like that, it's like what I was
Like,
I
do you
pre
feel like that's like something that you're trying to embody when you're making
no,
music, or
this is
something
the
you're trying to escape
existential
from?
horror. This is the
That you're,
existential horror
that
that
you're,
I
yeah.
need a world where I'm in charge. I have the power to make this world in my image.
Mm.
It, and then I can share it with other people. And they're like, we're in a fucking bubble of art where things make sense and there's justice. I
How do
need
you,
I need
how do
that
you,
at a deep
how do
level.
you make sure then that your job side of that, of music, which is more, I feel like you're exposed to, like, because I used to do startup stuff. There's a lot of marketing, growth hacking, all this stuff. You're very much exposed to capitalism and what the
Oh
world
yeah.
is like. Like, how do you stop that from, like, do you put yourself in a different state when you're working on the
Yes.
job site, so that you very much try
Yes.
and like keep
Different
away
hats.
from when you,
That's
okay.
why I got that creator hat. Why Adam Meow made me that creator hat and sent it to me is because he was
Yeah.
taking classes and I was like, I'm always talking about like put on your creator hat, put on your editor hat, put on your marketer hat, put on your fucking spreadsheet hat, And like you really do have to like compartmentalize. And I feel as though like if I didn't have that place that I could go to, that and I mean like unless I go deaf or like lose all access to technology, I'll be able to make music. Like I'll always be able to do it. Even if I have like a phone I can make music on. And any kind of like fucking, like my M8 tracker is like one of the funnest, most empowering things to make music on because it's like you can just do it anywhere, anytime. Don't need a sound card, don't need
Mhm.
a MIDI controller, don't need anything. Just this tiny little box that fits in your pocket, has a battery. It's like for breaks, you could build one yourself out of super cheap components, you know? And like having and then it's also like I love like using a device that is not designed to be obsolete. It's not designed to break. It's not designed to fucking trick you into buying some subscription. Like I think that the inherent unknowableness and pointlessness of everything else would be
Yeah.
unbearable without
Yeah.
without music. So,
How do you stop that bleeding into your music time? If you spent the whole day working on slides, reaching out to people,
oh,
and
I
now it's
don't
time to
I don't
sit
do it.
down and,
I don't like I'll do
okay.
a nighttime session where like the end of the day I'm like, okay, let's fucking unwind, do some sound design, like get away from
Yeah.
shit for a bit. Or if I'm like working on doing a bunch of like taxes or something, I'll be like, okay, I'm gonna take an hour, make a beat and just like do it really quick. But I don't like sit down to do like serious music.
Mm.
Like if I have a fucking like argument, like there was in the past at the dojo, I'm being me being an idealist. Like I would often hire people who I met and like grew to like through the dojo, and then
Hmm.
we'd be working closely, and they'd be like, "Hey, like give me a job. Like I want to work at the dojo," and I'd be like, "Okay," you know. And there have been a few times where those people have fucked me over really bad, and that like if I had an argument or like or something, or like if I had to fire someone, like I probably can't make music for like a couple days after that. Like I might be able to like organize sample libraries or do some fucking so like I've mastered tracks when I'm angry before,
Hmm.
Like, I can do a mix down when I'm angry, but I can't like come up with new creative ideas because unless I'm gonna like write some fuck you song about that person, you know? It's like things that change your emotional state or like take away your focus or whatever. Yeah, no way. Like if I'm gonna do a full daytime session, like I don't even go on the internet that morning, I like wake up, I don't check my email, I put my phone on like, and like I have a day of the week. Every week on Thursdays is my music day that nobody fucks with me. Nobody fucking people know I'm unreachable on Thursdays. And like people
And so
know that.
you're like pretty aware of your own mood going into a session, and if it's just like not in the right place, you're like, I don't think this is the right
Yeah.
time to do a studio
And
session.
then in those days I'll be like, okay, let's do a day of like research and sound design, or I'll like make
Mm.
multi-samples out of a hardware synth and like make myself some really cool instruments. Or like before this session, like I had this really good breakthrough. yesterday where on the M8 tracker, I figured that I found this way where like one of the destinations on the MIDI track is internal. And I was like, internal? What's that? And you can like specify a program number, and then that gives you one of the instruments from 1 to 127. And because it's an external device, the external MIDI has polyphony. So there's like a chord sequencer action, and there's an add a note sequencer action. So you can play chords polyphonically, but each voice in the chord is a separate instantiation of that sound. So if you
Mm-hmm.
have a randomization and you play a chord, each note of the chord is randomized differently, right? So I made this like this like cool, like the sequence is just like one note sending over and over again, but it had a LFO with like a low pass gate with a triangle LFO. So it's like as the values open, it's like sound is normal. And then it very quickly goes down and the volume goes down and the filter goes down and it gets that like nice low pass gate sound. So it's so as the LFO cycles, it makes a rhythm like dunk, dunk, dunk,
Mm-hmm.
dunk, dunk. But each voice in the chord has a slightly different rhythm. So you get like you play a three note thing, you get like a three sound
Rhythmed.
phasing like
Yeah.
Steve Reich fucking thing with it. And then I was like, oh, randomize the panning too. And then whatever. And I was making then just this one note repeating, you get like a different rhythmic, like multi-phase, not time synced relationship, like every time that chord plays. And so like I was like, oh, can I do that in Ableton? And then like I was like just doing it in Ableton and I got it it's just like one of the coolest patches I've ever made. And I was like, oh my God, this is gonna be like I'm gonna make a whole track around this patch now,
Mm-hmm.
you know? And like that kind of work, you can be kind of angry about something or whatever and do that kind of work and still have it like have that escape effect a little bit. But it's like composing a whole song in a day, like usually the times when you do your best work, it's like you're 100% focused, you're coming from your best place emotionally, you're not distracted, and at the same time, you're kind of like lighthearted about the way you approach it. Like it's like you're either you don't give a fuck about it, you're trying to do something silly or stupid or a comedy thing or whatever. You're like not taking it serious, trying to make music that's satire or music that makes fun of some other music or whatever
Mm-hmm.
that's not serious. Or you're kind of like expressing some emotion that's like expressing something like inherently like absurd, you know? And you're like, oh, like I'm fascinated with this one musical concept right now that just sounds so crazy to me. How can I push this so far that it's like, oh my God, these fucking hands. I still haven't been able to figure that out. Oh,
Fireworks.
whoa, whoa.
Wow. Should
Double
have been
thumbs
doing
up.
this in my Zoom calls.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. Um,
Okay.
but yeah, so like when I
Yeah.
find something that I'm fascinated with, like maybe it's a piece of hardware or a production technique or something, I'll like push that thing to the point of absurdity and like then do not much else. You know, a lot of the time those tracks that are like that, or if you have like a really good spark that you're like, I know just how this fucking track's supposed to be, just from that
Right.
spark. You know, when you have that kind of like either total certainty about what you're trying to do, or this lighthearted, like everything, like this idea is so fun that I can do no wrong, you know? Like when you get that
Yeah.
lighthearted thing and like you're just like there's no way to fuck up, you know? But it's when you start thinking like I could make a mistake. That mistake
Totally.
could be
Yeah.
serious. What are the consequences of making this mistake? Or like, oh, that thing set me off. I'm gonna fuck my day up, you know? And it's like how your emotional reaction to that is a big part of what makes the difference between getting a track done and not, you know? And like
Yeah.
the days when it just comes together on its own, you know, it's always like you're just in a good emotional place, you're focused, you're feeling it. So, you know, if I know I have a day like that coming up, like I won't read the news before bed. I won't like won't read the news or fucking go online at all in the morning. Like I just do my like morning routine that is designed to get my mind ready to have such a day. And then I come into the studio and I'll be like, okay, it might not happen right away. It might not happen at all. But I'm here to do my fucking thing and just keep putting
Yeah,
one foot in front of the other. Whatever happens, it happens. And I'm okay with any outcome. And this, even if this yields no result, it is rewarding in itself to do this activity. So I'm lucky to spend my day creating. There are people who would
that's
like
the
kill for this opportunity. So
that's
I'm gonna
100%
be
the kind of
grateful.
like more playful mindset that I'm trying to take with music, and where I think, I don't know if like maybe you noticed near the end of like the Remix Your Live contest, like last couple weeks, I sort of dropped off
Oh,
a
everybody
little bit
does.
with
Yeah, that 90 days
habits
is
and
tough.
stuff. And it is, but like it was tough for me for a different reason, which is that like I know I could have powered through the whole thing and did the thing, but like I've just been powering through so much of stuff, music, work,
Yeah,
everything that
yeah,
I
and it
didn't want to
seems like
keep.
music is kind of like a outlet like for you and not like
Yeah.
I'm gonna
Like I
fucking
don't want to
do this
like
for my
keep
job.
powering through it with the same kind of like feeling crappy or feeling like it's not this like
Yeah.
light, playful thing. And
Yeah, and
that's
I
yeah.
think you really hit it with that. That's why I was like, yeah, that matriarch one, like I think you really hit it with that one. And you should take that seriously. Open that project file up again, maybe save a new version because what like it was like, there is kind
Hmm.
of a completeness to it as the way it came out. But like, time and time again, I'm like surprised that the tracks that my fans like the best and the ones that work on the dance floor the best, a lot of the time I'm like, that one? Really? And then over time, I'll kind of like by seeing how they enjoy it or talking to them about it, I'll be like, okay, I understand why this is good now. But usually at first, like a lot of my biggest tracks at first, I'm like, this is not that great.
I'm
Like
like scared to touch it now though. I'm like I know it's like
well,
in a
just save a
good
version.
state, but
Yeah, just save a
okay,
version.
yeah.
Just number your saves, whatever.
I get kind of in my head when you're like, hey, that's a good track, or like, like I think for me it's like the more praise I get, the harder it is then for me to like keep doing it. Cause I'm like, I want the next one, so I don't want to like disappoint. I want to make sure it's good and all this stuff.
Yeah,
And
but like
so,
nothing matters. Like
yeah,
we're
yeah,
like
that's, I need to embody that a little
think of
more.
how old the universe is. Like it's like billions of years old. And like
Yeah.
the habitable planets in the known universe that we can see with our current technology, there are like trillions of planets, billions of them have to be habitable. And if that like statistically, the estimate is like if life can arise on a planet that has, water that is liquid and these organic compounds, like they found organic compounds on like fucking asteroids and like, on Mars and stuff, like all the building blocks. Like if you believe um,
Mhm.
the primordial soup hypothesis, which I don't know, it
It's a
seems like
dark forest out there, Dylan.
it makes sense. But if you believe the primordial soup hypothesis, then there's got to be fucking like, probably like at least tens of thousands of civilizations,
Hmm.
in our
They
galaxy.
want to
And
kill
that's
us.
just one galaxy. Like,
Yep.
and think of the timescales that they're operating on, and it's like pretty much every time in my life I've gotten super bent out of some shape about some shit that I thought mattered so much.
Hmm.
Time will pass, things will change, and I will look back on
Yeah.
that thing and I'll be like, why did I let this bum me out so much? You
So
know?
true, man.
And it's
Yeah.
like, yeah, it's just like, you can be like, oh, nothing matters. I'm so depressed. Or you could be like, nothing matters. I'm free, you know? And yeah, and it's like it's just like and we can't like even in the things you're mad about, like we can't we can't ultimately know what's good or bad. And that's like, you know,
Yeah.
like that Kurt Vonnegut, Kilgore Trout story where like the purpose of intelligent life is to poison the earth and thus toughen up bacteria for space travel. You know, I was like, that makes sense, you know, like that from that perspective, destruction is exactly what we should be doing. And is it wrong? Like, I mean, it kind of makes sense, like populating the universe with extremophile bacteria that are ready for space. Like that kind of
I
makes
gotta read
sense.
that short story.
Yeah, it's one of the it's attributed to Kilgore Trout. It's not, it's just described in a book. Because like
Mm,
Kilgore
okay.
Trout's like Kurt Vonnegut's fictional avatar in his
Mm,
universe, and he's like this fucking like, you know, unsuccessful writer who like is only ever published in porn magazines, who like need to fill pages with stories because they can't just have titty pictures because the laws are what they are. So they just hire like whoever to write whatever because like AI hasn't been invented yet. So he's just like writing all these stories, like just getting paid by the word, no editor, like just fucking in a shitty basement, you know? And Kilgore Trout, like Kurt Vonnegut, when he has an idea for a story that he likes the idea enough to want to share it, but not enough to make a whole book of it, he'll like summarize it and attribute it to Kilgore Trout. And it's like described as an aside inside of another book. And this was one of those books. So it doesn't have a title or anything, I don't think.
got it. It's
Yeah,
like a
but it's
meta little, yeah.
yeah, it's really, and then Kurt Vonnegut appears in one of his books and meets Kilgore Trout, and then reveals to Kilgore Trout that he's a fictional creation and he has an existential crisis at one point. It's so great. It's so great. Um, but yeah,
Uh,
um, but yeah, it's like, you know, none of that shit really matters. And I think
yeah.
like, you know, the one thing that you can be sure of, like Rene Descartes says, is that like, you know, there is thinking, you know, whether that means, I mean, I would say that's one step further than Descartes, right? Because he's like, I exist, and it's like the I don't know. Do you need an I to think? Like that's kind of inferring the self. That's a big leap. But you can be sure that there is thinking and experiencing happening, you know? Thinking and experiencing are happening. There is the existence of thinking and experiencing, and it seems to be centered on your consciousness. Whether that means you're an individual consciousness or it's a trick of the light is remains to be seen. But um, you know, you can be sure that that's happening, and it's like, you know, don't waste that. You know, like I think you can know those things that like, you know, if you've you've got this capacity for this and you're here and it seems kind of like you're making decisions, then
Mhm.
you know it, I like enjoy that shit, you know. And I like, one thing that just drives me fucking wild, and I just like, it's just so baffling to me, is when you meet people who have like this like life that is like, you know, a little bit higher than yours on like the totem pole of envy, and you're looking at this other person's life and you're being like, I would fucking kill for that life. And then you talk to them about it and they're like, everything
Yeah.
sucks all the time. It's so stupid. It's fucking bullshit.
Hmm.
I spent all my day. I'm so mad all day. I'm just so mad about stuff. Everybody's dumb, you know? And like when I hang out with someone like that, I'm like,
That's like
fuck,
Dead
you're
Mouse.
fucking wasting it. You're wasting it. And it's like, it's upsetting, you know? And when you're angry and when you're upset about life,
Right.
when you're complaining about things being stupid, in your mind, you're like, other people have it so much better than me. But in the mind of many other people, they're looking at
Hmm.
you and going like, fuck, I'd kill to have what you have. And here you are fucking pissed off all day. It's
Yeah.
an affront, you know? So
That's
I
such a
think,
good perspective.
yeah, I think you can kind of take, you know, so like it's really important to like enjoy your time and be, you know, make yourself enjoyable to be around, you know, like
Yeah. Yeah.
those things. And like music is the medicine that gets me to that place, because I would be fucking miserable otherwise, and I would make everyone around me miserable otherwise. Like if I did not have a creative outlet, I would just complain about all the fucking things that I see that are upsetting, because they're, you never run out. You never run out, you know? So,
Yeah.
you know, so I mean, even if you like think about it as like, you know, medicine for yourself, you know, And if you're like, because like when you're approaching it and it's justified by numbers or, you know, some sort of fucking item to cross off your bucket list, when you're approaching it as that, it's like the music becomes like a means to an end. And when it's a means to an end, the instrumentalization of it, like not like it's an instrument to get to your end, not like music instruments, but the
Mm-hmm.
instrumentalization of it, like when music is an instrument or a tool to get to an objective, um,
Mm-hmm.
that ends based thinking that, you know, yes, we do need that to judge whether something is good or bad, like as we were talking about earlier, but like that instrumentalization of it, it kind of devalues the medicinal qualities of the music for you and consequently for other people. And
100%.
when you're approaching music as like a way for you to externalize your inner life, to externalize your emotions, to process things that maybe you have trouble putting into words, even in your journal, or to process like other, like I write a lot of my best music when I'm like devastated by something,
Mm-hmm.
like if I've like lost someone close or if something super fucked up has happened in the world or whatever, and like I need to just get in the studio to fucking deal with it. A lot of the time my best music comes out of that. And even though that is my most personal music that I was like writing just because I had to, you know, when other people hear that music because it's not some fucking like bubblegum fucking Taylor Swift, Katy Perry, fucking like Justin
Mm-hmm.
Bieber mass market, like let's make music that's gonna make us rich. People can pick up on that, where it's like, hey, here's like just catch a feeling one time, and then that is often the music that is the most successful, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And that's, I think, why like so much of the time, like the vibe in my timer beats, even though like I love making like super intricate music that I spend fucking forever on and do technical things that I'm like, I can't believe this is real now,
Mm-hmm.
that I like, but that's like as I'm approaching it as like a personal challenge or like a problem solving thing or like a flex, you know? And other people, they're not like, oh, that's cool, because that music is like, it's almost like it's there to serve the ego in some way, or it's there to serve some kind of like preconceived objective. Whereas
Mm-hmm.
when the music is just like has this vibe, like it's like medicinal or it's personal or it's like you're just in a fucking good mood one day and you're just like, you know what, let's just make fucking really dumb house music today. Like I'm just gonna make like the dumbest house music I can, like just shit eating grin, like fucking stupid. It's gonna have fucking it's just good. Let's make it a song about butts, like those days, where you're just like, fuck it, whatever, like a lot of the time, like those songs are the ones that really strike a chord with people. Like that Bad Bitches Timer beat that was like my most popular track last year was like that was so dumb. I was like, this is how stupid music formula is. Like to my friend, I was like, this is like it's not hard. Like just do the thing. Just do the thing. Don't think about it, And I was just like showing them how the fucking no middling around. I was like, stop making
Yeah.
it hard for yourself. Like make it easy and dumb. And like that one blew up, And it's just
Have you
like
watched American Fiction? That's like the premise of the whole movie. He's like, "What's the stupidest book I can write?" And then it blows up, and everyone loves it. So,
that's awesome. Yeah, I mean that's
um,
like people like they just want to like they're spend all day trying to be smart. Sometimes you're
yeah,
just like, you know what? Let's get dumb for a bit, Like it's and I mean there's like for every emotion, there is a person who yearns to let themselves have that, right? And like even if it's like fucking having a good cry, there's lots of people that like they need that. They need that release. And like even though it's like a negative thing, like being really heartbroken or being really like, weighed down and by fucking genocides that you see on the news or something that's like really fucking you up. Like sometimes you need to put on holiday in Cambodia on the day Henry Kissinger died, and like it's like fucking, like even the darkest emotions, there's someone who needs to let themselves feel that, and they'll use the music as medicine to let themselves open up and feel that.
Mhm.
And then like happy music, like a lot of the time people have the grimmest fucking lives, make super happy music because they're like, I fucking need this. The rest of my life
Yeah,
sucks. Like I just want to fucking have a good time and forget about that shit. Or like, you know, maybe someone spends their entire life fucking having other people tell them that they're fucking nothing, and then they put on like Hustlin' by Rick Ross and like fucking jump up and down in the air and yell what a few times, and it's like they need that, so it's like it kind of doesn't matter what emotion it is. As long as the emotion is like powerfully and authentically expressed, there is an audience for it, you know?
exactly. Exactly. Yeah, and even when I listened to some old stuff before I did therapy, I listened to it now and I'm like, oh, that's what I was feeling. I didn't have a mental way of like really explaining it, but the music was that, it was beyond words. So 100% agree.
Well, another thing that I would suggest for you too is like, a lot of authors, right? Like book fiction authors, they'll like write out the details of like some really fucking personal shit that happened to them from their real life, but then they just change all the fucking names and then just be like, oh yeah, this character has a really small penis, so that no one's like, I'm the person with the small penis. That's my life. It's really funny.
Yeah.
They like they
Yeah.
give it's like a thing that authors do. They'll give the character the small penis or like herpes or something, so that no one wants to claim to be that character. But when you put something that is so personal that you like wouldn't even share it with your significant other, something that's like that level of personal, but you obfuscate it so that it has like the vibe of meaningfulness and it acts as a totem to draw out authentic emotions from you and as something that can provide creative certainty so that you're like, oh, I know how this needs to be, you know? If you put things that are really personal into your music and that are maybe a bit dark, that can also help make your music authentic, and like I made this track Open Your Eyes that I often use as an example of this, that I made like I was on the road and my dog had just died, and the night before
Mm,
I found out like by fucking like going on my computer, I was like, oh, I got to go download this track. And I like went in the green room, went to download the track like an hour before the set. And I found out that my dog
damn.
died like right before the set that I flew across the world to play. It was like fucking, is it Israel? Like it was really far.
Wow.
And I'm like, fuck, I got one gig here. And like, this is fucking the news that I just got. And I was like,
Hopefully it
well,
wasn't the festival on the border of
like shove
yeah.
that down, and then I fucking played the set and then was like, I fucking need to go. Like, I can't be at a party right now. Like, I need to go. My dog just died. Like, I gotta get out of here. And I just like went to bed. And then I was like all jet lagged and fucked up. And like woke up at 6 in the morning and like just started putting some shit together because I didn't know what else to do. And then, the promoter woke up and he was like, oh, fuck, are you okay? And I was like, I need to get to a studio. Like, who's got a studio? And he's like, I'll call my buddy Captain Hook. He's got a really nice studio. Like, I'll fucking hook you up. And then he brought me over there and I became, friends with Captain Hook ever since. And we've worked together a lot. And we wrote this song and like the samples, it's got this like Jim Morrison sample from like it wasn't even on a Doors record. It was from like some random bootleg of him drunk playing in a bar. And he had this vocal where he's like, just close your eyes, forget your name, forget the world, forget the people. And to me, I was like, I'm gonna use that song, that sample as like my wife's family are like Buddhist, and like we went to
Hmm.
Buddhist funeral and stuff, and like when it's like the like in the Tibetan Book of the Dead, when you're like meditating and like sending messages to the person who's like going through the bardo or whatever. And I'm like thinking about my dog going through the doggy bardo. And I'm like, okay, well, I'm like, I want her to know everything's okay. And like, you know, maybe don't go in the first door that appears and shit like that. So I was like, so that was to me, that was the meaning of that sample. But in the context of that song, like to someone who's like tripping balls on the dance floor, that's a sample about like doing drugs.
Hmm.
And like having these like kind of hidden personal dimensions to it and like figuring out ways to put your real life and your real emotions, the
Hmm.
more private and the more scared you are to feel it, the more powerful a totem it can become in your creative process. And when you intentionally just make it so that no fan will ever put two and two together. Like it's just hit, like unless you fucking tell them, they're never gonna get
Hmm.
it, you know? And authors do it, artists do it. And it's a great way to kind of draw that out of you and to draw you into that space where you're like, okay, this is a medicinal process for me. And when you're in that space, that's often where like when you're writing like the longer sessions or the more serious projects, quote unquote,
Hmm.
that's often a method that people will use because like the lighthearted shit is cool, but that's not the full spectrum of human emotions. And a lot of the time you have other shit that you're like really feeling and processing, and music can be a way to like process that shit,
Hmm.
as well as to escape from it.
This is the first time I've heard of the totem concept. I'm gonna have to look into that more because I'm like finally starting to feel my emotions for the first time in like literally like decades, and I'm all about trying to explore more of that and how to like embody it in the music instead of
Did you do the
just
producer's path?
I did not.
Okay, because the producer, this is like all shit for the producer's path. Yeah, because but it's yeah, basically like the first assignment in the producer's path
Mm,
is to basically collect a large reservoir of like personally meaningful audio, pieces
mm,
of writing, images, etc. Like make that like private vault that you like don't share with anyone. And it can be like kind of a combo of the journal, your brain, and folders on your computer, and not everything in the vault is going to be like audio. There might be some stuff that's just like lyrics, or like you're like, oh, I have this idea for a visual character or
mm.
whatever, but you want to find things that are like powerfully personally meaningful and assemble them in a place that you never fucking show anybody. And if you feel like you could open that folder and show it to another person, you're not doing it properly. Like,
Go deeper. Yeah.
yeah, there's got to be shit that's like scares you in there, right? And that's like the first assignment before the course even
Mhm.
starts, you know? So I would recommend doing that. And it might be some stuff that comes up in therapy. It might be some stuff that's like, even like I don't know. I mean, everybody has different fucking weird shit with their family, or
Mhm.
people like loved ones or whatever, but like just fucking change the names to protect the innocent and you're all good.
Luckily, it's music, not a book. It's a little harder to connect the dots
Dude,
on.
my wife fucking every time I do something embarrassing, it's like a fucking story on her goddamn blog. Worst.
What's your code name on her blog?
I don't have one. She just
Oh,
publishes
it's just Dylan.
fucking stories about me. She doesn't change my name or anything. I'm like, God
Oh,
damn it.
that's good. That's
Yeah,
good.
some of them are really embarrassing, but whatever. He's still here. you know?
Oh
Yeah.
man.
Um, But yeah, I mean that's I don't know, that's kind of how I balance it, how a lot
Yeah.
of people balance it. And I think like the Rick Rubin book talks about a lot of these same sorts of things. Did you do that Artist's Way book?
I started, it got a little religious,
Oh
and
yeah,
then
yeah, you got to kind of just
like Christianity
skip over those
totally
parts.
triggers me,
Oh yeah,
but
I do not. I'm not big on fucking J
but
Town.
I like the journaling and I like the, the concept behind it.
Yeah, but the recharging your batteries part is important.
Oh, I didn't get to
Yeah,
that part. Yeah.
yeah. Part of you're supposed to like do the journaling every week, and then once a week you do something just for yourself that is like
Mm.
filling your creative reservoir. And it might be going to a museum, it might be going fishing, it might be, you know, hanging out with some new person that you think is really exciting, or like just you just find activities and things that you can
Mm.
physically do outside of the studio that are the point
Oh,
of
outside of so
outside of the
studio time wouldn't count as
no
a
studio time does not
yeah.
count. Like
Okay.
that's output, right?
Mm. Okay.
If you do only output, you get gassed out and
Mm.
it's just not good. Like human beings are an input output system. Like an artist is like a prism or a lens through which reality refracts. We're not the originators of everything, not even ourselves. And it's like the role of the artist to highlight and focus different things to refract the light into separate colors and give us a new perspective on things. And when you kind of view your art as an input-output system, you view your mind as an input-output system,
Mm.
um, filling the inputs, charging your artistic batteries is very important. And if you're going to achieve a high level of output, you're going to need an elevated level of input as well. And,
Right.
the vaults slash, whatever you want to call it, the folder of sparks or whatever, that is also because like I keep the folder of sparks separate from the like fucking
Mm.
personal vault, right? Like or the safe. You could call it a safe, maybe. It's better than a vault because the vault usually refers to your like body of unreleased tracks. But yeah, so I guess the safe, and you're safe. Um, but the sparks
Password
folder, like
protected.
you'll open the sparks folder when you're in a session with someone, right? So
Yeah.
you don't want to have like fucking pictures of that time you fucking, I don't know, almost cut your dick off or whatever in there. Like, you'd put that in the safe, and then be like, fucking like this is some shit that's like fucking just like the most powerful emotions in your life,
Hmm.
and or the things that inspire you the most, or the things that you would never admit to liking to another person, you know,
Mm.
like all that kind of shit, and like that is in a way recharging the batteries. And then going out and just like doing shit in the world, that is like designed to recharge you at a creative level is it's important to take that time and to do that. But that part of the book was something that practice is something that I stuck with. But yeah, a lot
Mm.
of the religious shit, like even like Alcoholics Anonymous, Narcotics Anonymous, etc.
Yeah.
Like that shit,
Yeah.
like I fucking, because I had my demons with fucking drugs, and like I had to kind of face that. And I was going to meetings and stuff, and I was like, is there a way to do this? Is it? And they're like, maybe
Without
music could be your God. And I was like, I don't know. Like it seems kind of woo-woo. Like I don't want to fucking make myself dumber so that I can do this. Like, just doesn't seem, yeah. So I just,
There's a book, The Myth of Normal by Gabor Mate. I don't know if you've heard of it.
oh, I've heard of Good Boy Mate, but I haven't heard of the myth of,
Yeah, Myth of Normal is his latest book, and it's so good because it
yeah, I'll
talks
get my,
about trauma and addiction and like Alcohol Anonymous and all that stuff. It's like they're just like an abstinence approach, and you're not fixing any of the stuff that was broken that like drove you to drugs and
yeah.
alcohol in the first place. So, yeah, yeah,
Okay, so Gabor Mate,
yeah.
the
Myth of
myth
Normal.
of normal. Awesome.
so
Yeah,
good. He's been
I'm
on so many
currently rereading
podcasts.
the
Yeah.
first Dune book to get ready to see the second Dune movie. But
Oh, you
once
haven't seen it yet?
I know the
I've
second
seen it
one,
twice already. It's so
yeah,
good.
yeah, not the second one. So yeah, well, I want to freshly read the book. So,
Okay.
but yeah, I'll put
Try
it
and see
on
it
the
in
steps. Oh,
IMAX
I
if you
accidentally
can.
hit my air horn button. Whoops, I
We have
forgot.
sound effects.
I forgot. Yeah, well, I just have because there's just times when it's funny to have an air horn.
I'm trying to
Um,
trigger fireworks, but it's not coming. Okay. They're like, you get one of those. Only you can do it. Oh, because it's your session, maybe. Got it.
I think
Got
you got to hold the thumbs up for a while and maybe hold them.
it. They're like,
Yeah,
you're
there
not
you
happy
go.
enough.
There you go. You got it.
All right,
All right.
sweet. So let's have a look under the hood.
Yeah, so it started with me just playing with the Mariana synth. Yeah, so the first preset that loads is just system bass, and so I was playing with Mariana first day I got it, and it kind of sounds like this, which is pretty sweet already. And I was
Yeah,
like, all right, let
thick.
me just exactly, it's thick, it's deep. Let me just find a like a drum that can sort of, complement that. And the kick was actually one of ill.Gates' I think Neurohop forum kicks you sent us a while back, and I was just
Yes. Yeah.
yeah.
Thank you, Neurohop Forum. Very cool.
Yeah, so I was just scrolling through them, and I think I randomly just stumbled on this kick, which is,
Nice.
I mean, it has everything you need in it. It has the rumble built in. It's a pretty deep kick, even has a little high-end frill at the end. And so all I did was I just played this kick, and then I was just hitting a single note on Mariana. And you can see here the sequence of notes I was hitting, and I can just play this one real quick.
F sharp, a fine note.
Yeah, so it's in the key of F sharp, and it's like I was playing this while the drums were playing. So let me play the drums too. Was just trying to find rhythms, and I just did this for like 2-3 minutes, and which it already sounds pretty cool. So eventually settled on the pattern over here near the end. And that is basically the whole track, because what I did from that was I pulled it in, kind of rearranged cropped it, and then flipped it. So there was like a little variation in it, and tried putting it on some other Mariana synths. So the intro kind of sounds like this. And all this other sound is another Mariana. I think it was the Rezo preset that I was scrolling through, but it's the same rhythmic pattern as the deeper one.
Yeah, I love the strategy of coming up with a nice piece of MIDI and then just sending it to lots of different instruments so that it's like I usually call it like revoicing. But yeah, I find that strategy is a good one. It's very effective. And it helps the track to be like unified and cohesive, but still have as, enough sonic diversity for the ear.
Exactly. I feel like I often just like try making too many different very like new melodies, and it ends up sounding like 4 or 5 different tracks mashed up into one, versus just if this is kind of taking little variations of it. So yeah, this is the Rezo Snap. I think this is just again the default as I was scrolling through, and it sounds
I
pretty cool.
I mean they spent some time on those presets, and especially with the synth that's designed to be classic. It's like, let's say you're trying to come up with a, straight ahead percussive donk bass. Like, are you really going to do better than preset number one? Like the tendency is to like resist that and try and do everything all custom. But it's like, don't be afraid of presets. Presets are good.
Exactly. And I eventually did modify it for a little piece. Let me play a little section here. So this is just the rezo, but then I changed a bunch of settings to make it a lot dirtier. So instead of it sounding like, it now sounds like.
Cool.
And
Yeah, I like the
yeah, that was
noise.
the exactly. It's like it's such a weird this preset's crazy because if you just tap the note, it has this really cool tail, but if you like hold it down, it actually is shorter. So it's the reverse of what you so it was just a lot of experimenting and I
Yeah,
think I yeah.
that's a good technique. Mad Zach first showed me that for the MIDI fighter, because the MIDI fighter you don't have velocity. So like, how do you make an expressive sound? And if you have a long release and a short decay, a held note is short and a tapped note is long, and you can really do a lot with just that setup.
Exactly. It's pretty cool. And that's basically it. It was just those are the three main Mariana elements. There's the drums that we already looked at. And then I think the only other piece that sort of gives the track its vibe is this atmosphere sound.
Yeah.
And all I did was it wasn't even in key originally, but I think it was like a sample pack somewhere, and then I just pitched it to match the different notes. So it goes from D to
Oh,
E to
cool.
B. Because without it, it's like and then it adds that atmospheric thing.
Yeah,
Yeah, and that's
the
fun.
ostinato over those changing chord bass notes it really works.
Yeah, and the bass notes, it's pretty much static all the way up until the breakdown. And then, going back to this view, all I did was I originally cropped this whole section and took half of it, and most of the track is in the first half, and then just flipped it to the second half later over here and used that to give it some like variation. So you're not listening to the same drilling rhythm the whole time. It kind of flips itself right around the middle.
It looks like the pulse goes. It looks like the pulse goes from being one note to transposing to go with those chords in the second half.
Yeah, exactly. So second half, I was trying to switch it up a little bit too. One thing I added later, so this whole track was done in about an hour because it was so simple and you're just exploring one synth. You can just jam these out super quickly like a timer beat. And originally that was it, and it sounded pretty good. And I came back later to add a bit more melodic stuff because that's stuff I like as well. And so that's when I started changing up the pulse to match the melodic changes. And all the melodic changes is just a diva synth that has an arpeggiator on it with the chord stack. And it's just, a few notes, really simple. And I just cut out the bits that I like. So it sounds like this. But what's cool is you can just play this on the piano, and you can just make I could just play this for like an hour and just make
Yeah,
new little frills.
really nice. Fun fact: Diva is one of the only places that you'll get zero delay feedback filters. There's almost nobody that uses zero delay feedback filters, but they go squish, whereas digital filters will whistle most of the time unless they're zero delay feedback filters.
It makes sense why the Diva filters, like the feedback sounds really good when you turn it up too. So yeah.
Shaperbox has ZDF as well.
Nice, nice. So yeah, that's basically the whole track. So I added the melodic stuff later. It doesn't really honestly even need them. Like without it, it still sounds like this. But then if you add in the melodics,
Yeah,
yeah.
I really like the way those melodic elements in the highs kind of open it up, because it's like I feel like perhaps having that darker, more low pass mix throughout, it would be kind of harder to DJ it in a set in among brighter tracks, but having just those really sparkly arpeggiator melodies up in the top of the spectrum makes like the whole mix feel a lot more open and bright, and it's kind of like I think it's helping you to get away with having so much low pass, which is good.
Exactly. I mean, the Mariana synth, I mean, I guess this is why they called it Mariana, is such like a deep, heavy, bassy sound. And so if you're like, which I was trying to make it the center of the track, and making it the center of the track means that it does have this like underwater deep feel. And so having the sparkly bits, yeah, definitely helped a lot. I'm glad I added those.
Cool. Very cool. One thing I've noticed when I'm trying to compose music that is like simpler in terms of the MIDI notes and like the compositional density, like the number of layers in the composition at any time, I find when you have sounds that are just like already great, it helps a lot more. And like the more of I find the more of myself that I put into my sound design, the easier of a time I have letting things be simple. Whereas if the sounds aren't quite there, I'll often add like way more MIDI notes perhaps than the track needs to kind of compensate for my feelings about the individual sounds. Do you feel that Mariana, like the tone of Mariana, helped you with minimalism?
For sure. I'm really glad that you gave that out as a prize during the etude lesson, because it otherwise I would have just like slapped it into a track with 30 other, MIDI audio tracks, and that's how I would usually make a song. But with the mindset of like we're just going to focus on one instrument, I think it really let the Mariana synth fill the space that would have been taken up by other sounds before, unnecessarily so, because the programming is that there's such complexity in the presets and in the changes you can make that it takes up a lot of the sound frequency already. And so this whole track only has like, I mean, this is like one of my smaller project files because it's only like maybe 20 tracks total, and that's including like FX and drums as well. And I don't usually do that, but I think doing that is what made this track sound better by just having a few synths, maybe two or three at most, occupying the whole space at the one time.
Yeah, definitely. And it's like, when you're working on a track too, a lot of the feeling like you need to add complexity, it kind of comes from like, how the sausage is made. Whereas like a listener is going to know whether you used, your own synths or a sample from a sample pack or whatever. And they just frankly don't care. They just want it to sound good. And it's like, we see with our eyes as much as we see with our ears. And when you're all up in the guts behind the scenes of things, the tendency is to be like, oh, I can't just do that. That's the easy way. I can't take the easy way. I got to make things hard for myself, and it's really great to see you kind of like, being able to work confidently and be because minimalism takes great confidence and boldness. So I was hoping you could perhaps say a few words on that and how you found confidence in the stylistic direction that you took, because it seems that during the Remix Your Life challenge, you came into it with like a wide variety of interests stylistically, but by the end, your output was like very, very focused, and you had a really clear signature sound. So I was hoping you could talk a little bit about finding that signature and finding like the confidence to be a minimalist.
Yeah, so I think part of Remix Your Life not only focused the style and the music, but also made it a lot quicker for me to jam this stuff out. And I think the biggest change was that I kind of view putting a song together like a jigsaw puzzle. And at before I was creating the jigsaw pieces while trying to put the jigsaw puzzle together. And these days I'm more like, okay, what jigsaw pieces can I already grab that are already ready made, and how can I fit them together effectively? And that part of that is just being like, as you said, no one really cares if you're using a preset if it sounds good. If it sounds good in your track, and maybe when you make a final version, yeah, you switch it up to something else. But for the purposes of just like getting like music out there and making it quick and making it sound good, definitely just like switching over and being like, oh, it's okay to use a Mariana preset. It sounds great. Let's just use a drum kick that sounds already full bodied instead of me trying to layer a 10-layer kick and spending the whole day doing that. Let me just use a kick from the Neuro Hop forum, and boom, we've got like half a track already. And that really, I think, made output a lot easier. And it was the pressure of having to do an assignment every week that I was like, I don't have time to be designing all of these sounds from the ground up. I want to make sure the assignment gets done. And that's really what I think jolted me into making tracks faster, and how I was able to like figure out my sound quicker, because there's like no time for you to be questioning, like, is this my sound? Is this the kind of music I want to make? It just whatever flows out of you. So.
Very cool. Very cool. So I was hoping now you could just talk a little bit about Mariana itself. And, for those who are curious about Mariana, now that some time has passed and you've used it more in your compositions, I was hoping that you could talk a little bit about the role that it has come to play in your music since then.
Yeah, it does two things for me. One is if I'm stuck for ideas and I just want to do a timer beat, I can kind of scroll through the presets and see what sounds cool and then build a track around that. Then other times when it's more of like a sound design thing, I mean, I'm not the best at like analog stuff, and Mariana very much is modeled on an analog synth. So the knobs to me are more foreign, but I like messing around with them and playing around and twisting them around and getting new sounds out of it. And that is like, I'll save off the preset. So that becomes a sound design aspect. Then in terms of fitting it in the track, I always leave plenty of space, like because it occupies such like a wide frequency range. I try and make sure that when I do use it, it's not being muddied by a bunch of other stuff, conflicting and taking up more of the range.
Very cool. Okay, so what makes you reach for Mariana as opposed to any of the other tools in your toolbox?
Yeah, with Mariana, I reach for it when I want a bassier sound. So my go-tos tend to be Serum, Diva, and Mariana for my synths. And so I hadn't had a synth before that occupied well the more subby, the mid lows, and Mariana just slots in perfectly. Because before, I would be trying to replicate mid lows and subs in Diva and Serum, but just the amount of complexity and design they've put into the patches are like they're honestly beyond what I can just naturally come up with myself on an analog synth. And yeah, that's when I reach for the plugin.
Okay, cool. And then do you have anything to say to people who are maybe considering getting Mariana?
Yeah, I would I would definitely recommend it. It's been a nice like addition because I feel like each synth has their sweet spot. Mariana definitely is perfect for occupying that mid, low, subby range versus my other synths do a better job with like the high end or sparkly things. So if you're like I've been recreating just like deep sub patches in Diva or Serum, I think Mariana could be like a good substitute for that if you want to expand your horizons a bit.
All right, very cool. So I guess now it's time for your pluggables. So where can people catch up with you and get a copy of your full Mariana etude as well as your other Nanaban music?
Yeah, you can find everything I'm making right now on soundcloud.com/tryondrugs. TBD on the name there. I'm still experimenting, but for now I'm just releasing it under there. And yeah, tracks like Mariana are up there.
So TRYONDRUGS.
Exactly.
At Try on Drugs. That will get you Nanaban, and you can go listen to his awesome Mariana etude, as well as many other awesome tracks. So yeah, he's one to watch for sure. All right, cool. Well, thank you so much for taking the time, Nanaban. I really appreciate you sharing your process with us. And it's super inspiring to see how you were able to compose such a lush, like complete and satisfying music so simply, using just like the presets from Mariana and like working with like layering up and revoicing a simple rhythm. And it's just like that track really, it has something special. Like the way when you listen to it right the way through, never gets boring. It's really satisfying. You did a great job on the mix. And I would play it in a set.
I appreciate that. And quick shout out to your Remix Your Life stuff too as well. I think that's really been this wouldn't have been made if I didn't participate. So yeah, thank you for putting that together.
Word up. All right, lots of love. Thank you for watching, everybody. Big up to Moog Synthesizers. Go grab your copy of Mariana today. You will not regret it. Peace. Step in my
out.